Hi guys, it's Christine with This Girl Hikes, and in this video I'm going to share with you my tips for the Trans Catalina Trail. First of all, what is the Trans Catalina Trail? Well, the Trans Catalina Trail is about a 40-mile trail that traverses the island of Santa Catalina Island, more commonly referred to as Catalina Island. Catalina Island is located 26 miles off the coast of Southern California and is part of the Channel Islands archipelago. The island is inhabited and most of the residents live in either the town of Avalon or Two Harbors. A lot of the island is dedicated to conservancy. Catalina Island does have an airport with a notoriously deceptive runway, so my preferred method of transportation to and from Catalina is via ferry. The Catalina Express ferry is a 60 to 90 minute ferry ride and costs about $70 round trip. There are several ports on the mainland and 2 ports on Catalina Island, in Avalon and Two Harbors. If you are planning a through hike of the Trans Catalina Trail, one key factor to consider with your itinerary is the availability of ferries to and from the ports you need on the days in which you are planning to travel. For example, the ferry from Two Harbors only runs on certain days of the week and only returns to San Pedro. Therefore, when building our trip, I needed to ensure that we would return to Two Harbors on a day that a ferry would be available to take us back to the mainland. However, one thing that I kind of messed up on, which was easily corrected, is that in order to be transported to Catalina, on the day that we were looking to depart the mainland, there were only ferries available from Long Beach to Avalon. So that's going to change probably with season and how busy the island is. What we ended up having to do is when we returned to the mainland back to San Pedro from Two Harbors, we actually had to catch an Uber to take us back to Long Beach to retrieve our vehicle, which was parked in the structure there. Fortunately, those 2 ports are not very far from each other, so we were able to do that without too great of an expense added. Another option for transportation would be to arrange a shuttle on Catalina Island to take you from Two Harbors back to Avalon to catch a ferry to the mainland. These services can be arranged through the Catalina Island Conservancy, and keep in mind they can also be used to transport you to and from different trailheads and campgrounds in case you were looking to segment the Catalina Trail into smaller sections. Catalina Island has a Mediterranean climate and there is significant exposure along the trail. This trail would be good to consider in late fall, the shoulder seasons of a mild winter, and in my opinion, optimally completed in the spring. Be aware that Catalina Island does receive most of its precipitation in late winter and early spring, so if that's not something that appeals to you, then you may have a different opinion on what optimal time is than I do. I personally like a more green, vibrant surrounding, and so I'm willing to contend with some rain in order to take in those sights. While Catalina Island is not necessarily very wild or rugged, it is considered a challenging hike. The trail is approximately 40 miles in length with about 8,600 feet in elevation gain. There are some portions of the trail that are very steep, like switchbacks, what? No. This trail has some of the steepest sections of trail that I have ever seen. Trekking poles are highly recommended, and I would say that it's important to have a good level of fitness and some experience hiking. Periodically on trail, you will encounter a shade structure. These are a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of getting some shade from the sun exposure and also to take in the beautiful panoramic views while having a little snack. Significant portions of the trails are on dirt road. The balance of the trail is beautiful single track. The trail has very good signage and mile markers. It would be quite a task to try to get lost on Catalina Island. Camping along the trail is limited to established campsites only. These campsites must be booked via reservation in advance. In order to book a reservation, one would visit reserveamerica.com. Be aware that reservations for Catalina Island fill up well in advance, and the itinerary for your trip will likely be determined by the availability of the campgrounds. Amenities at each campground vary slightly, but each one will have water spigots, a vault toilet, fire rings, and fox boxes. Parsons Landing is the most remote campground and probably the most beautiful, but it actually does not have running water. In order to arrange for water at Parsons Landing, you have to contact the Catalina Island Conservancy and pay for a locker. That locker key will be picked up at the visitor center in Two Harbors, and inside the locker is a 2-gallon container of water. At nearly all the campsites, you can also arrange for firewood. However, how the firewood is delivered to the campsite is going to vary. The arrangements for the firewood also need to be done in advance through the Catalina Island Conservancy. The trail takes you through 2 notable resupply points. The first resupply point is Airport in the Sky. The Airport in the Sky doesn't have everything that you need, but you can stock up on some additional snacks and have a warm meal. I highly recommend their breakfast burrito and taking one of their freshly baked cookies to go. I've also heard some really good things about their bison burger, so if you're there for lunch or dinner, that's something that you may consider. The second resupply location is in Two Harbors at the general store, and they have everything that you might need. Also in Two Harbors, you're going to find coin-operated showers and the availability of laundry, both wonderful amenities if you're spending a number of days out on trail. And there's also a restaurant where you can have a nice warm meal. Catalina Island is teeming with wildlife. Something I really enjoyed in the morning and evening was listening to the songs of the varied bird species while hiking along the trail. Catalina Island foxes are a fun sight to see, but they can also be a little bit of a nuisance as they are very curious. The foxes can be very small, almost like a house cat, and the campgrounds are supplied with fox boxes for a reason. It is important to utilize proper food storage to protect all the little critters of Catalina Island, including the foxes, squirrels, and birds. Catalina Island is also home to some animals that may pose a threat to your well-being if you're not cautious. There is a plentiful population of bison that inhabit the island. These animals weigh anywhere between 500 and 1,500 pounds and can be very territorial and aggressive. On our trip, we came across an entire herd of bison at one point, and then at several other points throughout our trip, we came across 1 or 2 bison along the trail. At one point, we had to deviate from the trail entirely in order to avoid a herd of bison that were at too close a proximity. The other type of animal to be cautious of would be rattlesnakes. It is important to keep your eyes scanning the trail and anywhere where your feet may fall, and also to listen. I had a very close encounter with a rattlesnake on trail, but I heard it before any harm was done. Due to the fact that my hiking partner and I had no time limit allotted for this trip, we spent 6 nights and 7 days on Catalina Island. However, I would say that this trip could comfortably be completed in 5 days and 4 nights. It is not uncommon to take less time than that, but that would mean higher mileage days and missing out on some of the sites. Let's discuss cost. Hiking the Trans Catalina Trail was hands down the most expensive self-guided backpacking trip I have ever been on. The cost of transportation, parking fees, campgrounds, and campground amenities really added up, and I'd say that I spent in the ballpark of $500 just for this trip alone. That's a lot more than I typically spend. Just to run down some things that I kind of discovered along the trail that I wish I had known. I found the campgrounds to be poorly marked with campsite locations. I wish I would have made a note to myself about the approximate location of my campsites within the campgrounds. Some of the campgrounds are quite large, and when you're pulling into camp kind of in the evening time, the last thing you really want to do is be hiking all over this kind of large campground to figure out where your campsite is located. As I mentioned previously, it is important to book these campsite reservations in advance because they do book up. So I had booked my campsites months prior and had kind of forgotten what location the campsites were within the campgrounds by time I was actually there. So if I would have taken a little screenshot of that to look at on my phone or notated it somewhere that I could have referenced, it would have saved us a little bit of headache in the evening. Blackjack Campground isn't cute. I'm sorry, it's not. Keep your expectations low. The other campgrounds get better. The Trans Catalina Trail was recently updated to be those kind of 38.5 or 40 miles. There used to be other portions of the trail that are no longer considered part of the Trans Catalina Trail, and there was also a reroute of part of the trail. Like I mentioned before, getting lost on Catalina Island would be a feat to achieve. It's not hard to keep track of where you are, but in order to stay on the actual trail that you intend to be on, you may want to just go ahead and pick up a map. I mean, the trail is really well signed, but we did find some discrepancies with the All Trails track that we had downloaded because All Trails was reflecting a previous iteration of the Trans Catalina Trail. There is actually a really fun community of people on trail and along the trail. We had some really wonderful interactions, and it was just fun with the trail community. It felt like its own little through hike, and that's something that I didn't anticipate but really appreciated. Expect to have condensation on your tent. So here's a little gear note. If you're someone like me that doesn't always travel with the stuff sack for your tent, consider bringing it along with this hike. Even though there wasn't precipitation every day, more nights than not, we woke up in the morning and found that our tents were covered in condensation. It makes sense. You're in a coastal environment, so if you can plan ahead for that, it will make things a little bit more comfortable when packing up in the morning. This trail does not feel remote, but it is beautiful. So if you like a little trail community and like to have some amenities and also some beautiful panoramic views, then this is a great opportunity for all of those. I actually recommend this trail also if you're a newer hiker and backpacker with a good level of fitness. This would be a really great introductory opportunity to some time on trail. It's not necessary to hike the entirety of the Trans Catalina Trail to get out there and enjoy the beauty of the island. This trail can easily be broken into weekend length trips and would very much be worth it to do so. Something I'm going to do is create a couple of different itineraries and post them on my website, thisgirlhikes.net. I'll post an itinerary like the one we did. I'll also post a shorter weekend itinerary, and then something that I'm personally curious about is the idea of fast packing on the Trans Catalina Trail. And so I'm going to post an itinerary that I may very well use in the future for that kind of endeavor. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing, liking this video, and sharing it with anyone to whom you think it may be useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.